Hello and welcome into the USL Tactics Show, where this week I want to talk about Colorado Springs and the way that their new return to a 4-2-3-1 shape really powered an offensive outburst against Indy 11. Some of that dynamic came down the right side, where Matt Mahoney often played narrow at right back, and he helped to link with forwards like Juan Tejada at that second striker spot. Still, the dynamic that defined the left wing was really what carried this game for the Switchbacks. Matthew Real, on loan from Philadelphia, made his debut at the left back spot, linking with Aiden Rocha from the central midfield and Yosuke Hanya at that left wing role to really challenge Indy and give the Switchbacks an offensive impetus they haven't had all season. You see some of the interplay here. Note how Real makes that underlapping run with Hanya. Note how Aiden Rocha hugs the sideline to provide variety for Colorado Springs. This is a level of fluidity, a level of flow that we simply haven't seen from much of 2024 from this side. Ultimately, because of that motion and because of the two-striker dynamic they maintain, the Switchbacks are able to score almost instantly. You see some variation here. Note how the forwards are both getting involved down in deeper areas to get play into the final third. But still, Colorado Springs maintains movement in higher areas. Both fullbacks are engaged, Hanya makes a striker's run, and it ends up with a shot on net. This is a team that used that flexibility to really up their defensive ante as well. Again, you're noticing Real, you're noticing Hanya, those left-sided players, really making a difference in cutting off Indy before they can hit their speedsters on the wing. This is defense turning into offense, and let me repeat, it's a level of spark we haven't seen all season from this team. Now, there were some foibles going the other direction. If the defensive rotations were slow, you could often see those fullbacks get isolated. That's the case here, where Indy is able to get a 2-on-1 against a lonely right back to equalize the game. This game ultimately ended up in a draw, marked by snow, marked by a red card in the second half. But for me, it really was good progress for Colorado Springs. This is the shape, this is the personnel they ought to rely on down the stretch to get back into the mix in the West. Trevor Amin has been a revelation so far this season for the Sacramento Republic, but the way in which they added another read this weekend against Loudoun United is going to be crucial for them down the stretch. And that's to take nothing away from the striker who led the entire continent of North America in goals last season. You can see how Amin had the ability to hold up play, to drop in, and let teammates get involved here. And that's a crucial role that every good striker must fill. However, when Sacramento works behind because of that effort, look at the lack of movement, the lack of players they have in the box to pay off that hard work. This is a team that had other reads, even with Amin running as the solo striker in this game. You see here how Roro Lopez dropped in to form a three-man midfield, thereby allowing a little bit more flexibility. Nick Ross, another one of those center mids, is able to get in and play a cross that's ultimately blocked as a result. So what was the change that really made the difference? Kieran Phillips, a loney striker from Huddersfield Town, came into the game off the bench to make his second career appearance for Sacramento. And the role he played, stretching the field, linking with Amin, and ultimately matching up one-on-one against Loudoun's two central defenders, turned this game and made it a win for Sacramento. And it was a hard-fought, chippy Saturday night contest. You're seeing here how Phillips was able to get behind, chip for a lovely goal off of Amin's assist. This is a player who's been somewhat mixed in his spell in England. You saw there in that brief flash that he's been an okay goal scorer in previous stops, but not one who's been overly influential, and he's often played as a winger. However, the two-man game that he established with Amin, the way he linked with Christian Pirano at this last chance, was vital to the way that Sacramento took hold of the game and leveraged their tactical advantage in the final moments against Loudoun United. Whether Phillips ends up being the starter or not, whether he can pair with Amin in a consistent 90-minute basis isn't the question. Having the option of somebody with that caliber off the bench, dependent on the matchup, is crucial for Sacramento going forward. Rhode Island FC and North Carolina FC, in their return and debut in the USL Championship this year, have ranked in the bottom half in the league in terms of expected goals per game. What's gone wrong, and how did these teams try to change up their approach over the weekend as they faced off? You see Rhode Island first off here. They've been a team that's run a back three for most of the season, and they sort of changed up that style with Prince Sadie coming in as this wing-back winger hybrid in the context of Saturday's match. You see how, on the other side of the field, Rhode Island was still able to access some of their usual patterns. You get a touch for Noah Fuson between the lines. Stephen Turnbull, who's mostly been the right wing back during the course of the campaign, gets upfield. But that's where the problems begin. There's no access to the center. Now you see the look and how Sadie ended up being in a somewhat unbalanced left wing spot for much of the game. In order to cover that, Gabriel Alves at left back, left center back, ended up covering space in a more traditional 4-2-3-1 sort of concept. But overall, while I like the change on paper, it didn't solve this team's ultimate issue, which is penetration down the center of the park. Now, North Carolina sort of had the opposite problem. They supercharged what they had in the middle of the pitch, using Luis Perez as a much deeper sort of attacking midfielder instead of his usual forward role. Still, ultimately, their best chances came when they could get interceptions and get out on the break quickly. You see that here. Rafa Mensingen from the right wing-back spot is able to get upfield, quickly charge in, and play a ball that deserved more ultimately. Compare that to these plays where you're getting Perez on the drop. Yes, it's nice to have the three-man midfield, but Rhode Island isn't tested. Granted, these are good central rotations to deny Perez and to clamp down on the flank and to deny Alex Anderson up top, but you're just not seeing enough tempo, you're not seeing enough movement from North Carolina FC. Ultimately, this team needs to do more to access their forwards. They need to get Evan Conway involved on more than just a bench basis. And it's really just emblematic of the way that neither of these teams have quite found their offensive balance in 2024.
Undefeated in their last 3 games in the league, Memphis 901 have been so good because of the flexibility that their shape is providing and the way that their press has been so effective at getting upfield and forcing the stops. What you're going to see here right off the bat is the way their offense is flowing. Bruno Lapa as the number 10 has been quite fluid, and the way that they're using Luis Fernando as an inverted right winger in combination with the speed of Marlon over the top has been unbelievably effective. In this sequence, Memphis overloads the right, and they get a run from Dylan Borczak from the left wing into the center of the pitch. There's a flurry of motion. Because of that flexibility, they're able to get a good shot on goal. Here you're going to see more motion. Note to the right of the screen how Luis Fernando and Marlon are swapping spots, winger and striker, in order to get chances in behind. Memphis brings that speed, that fluidity in every phase of the game. And that sort of aggression, that sort of tempo that they want to play with applies on both sides of the ball. You see their defensive 4-4-2 shape here, one that's forcing Monterrey to play out and force a turnover. Again, you're going to see the shape with notable central midfield marking going on. Emerson Hindman and Zach Duncan have been very effective standing behind a very aggressive front four and making sure that Memphis is able to stay whole. There were examples in this matchup over the weekend, an ultimate 2-2 draw, where Memphis gave up space, and that was largely because Monterrey kept them honest with balls over the top. Still, by and large, this 901 team is hitting their stride. They feel like they know how to defend, and when you've got players like Akeem Ward at the back, that certainly helps. But it's that fluidity up front, the way that they're able to take on opponents, highlight the speed of players like Marlon, highlight the inverted talents of Luis Fernando to get chances. They're going to keep this team in the playoff conversation down the stretch. Oakland got into the win column under Gavin Glinton for the first time on Saturday, and they did so by returning to the 3-4-3 that they started the season in. The difference for my taste was the role that Camden Riley played in the pivot and the way that it opened up the game for the Brutes. Here you're going to see Riley make a run over the top over partner Daniel Gomez in the central midfield. In doing so, he forces Orange County to sit back, and he opens a lane for Gomez to pop into. The play goes wanting, but it's really an example of how Riley opened up the offense. Here, Oakland is playing longer from the back. Riley receives, he knocks the ball onto a wide runner, but look at the way he follows up. Again, he's pushing the defense back. He's going to make a move into the right channel that tilts the pitch Oakland's way and keeps danger away from their own net. This play is ultimately going to end in a foul, creating a free kick for the Roots to take advantage of, and earning them a dangerous set piece in a good area, but it's because of the brightness in the midfield. Now, Oakland's really superior side of the ball came defensively. Interestingly, they used Riley as almost a man marker on Sofiane Jafal on the other side, but they're wingers, Trayvon Reed on the left and inverted Babacar Ndiaye on the right, really showed a lot of effort and energy shutting down the press and denying the half spaces to Orange County. Here you're seeing an extended defensive play from the Roots, one where they're rotating, they're pressing up and getting back, and all the while they're finding their shape and never letting Orange County get touches from their most dangerous players in the most dangerous areas. Look at the way that the wingers have dropped back and the pivot has solidified itself. Orange County could have had chances here, but because of the defensive rotation and because Riley is so attentive whenever the lethal Sophia and Jeffel gets the ball, Oakland is able to hold them off. This is an excellent sequence, and it's symbolic of the way that the Roots controlled this match and were ultimately able to get a winner that could galvanize the rest of their season. In a huge offensive outburst, North Carolina FC beat Miami 4-0 this Saturday night, and they did so in spite of a really high 4-2-4 press from the hosts. Louis Perez and Ezra Armstrong on the left side were ultimately the factor that made a difference. So let's dig into what happened to activate those two on the left. Here you're seeing North Carolina building out amidst that shape. You're noticing that Miami is able to send a winger, get the support of a center mid, and generally make life difficult and compact space down the flank. North Carolina doesn't advance here. Overall, though, the trend was different. Here you're seeing the heat map of Louis Perez and Ezra Armstrong on that flank. You'll notice that there was quite a bit of activity down low, and here you're going to see those two in action. This actually starts with the defensive intervention from Armstrong, but his combination play with Perez, their ability to draw the defense up and activate the speed of players like Olex Anderson and Evan Conway downfield was vital for North Carolina's attack. No matter the phase of play, Armstrong and Perez had this give and take sensibility. Even if Perez drifted to the other side of the field, there was intention behind it. He was drawing the defense his way, opening up the other side of the pitch for Armstrong, who, for my taste, has probably been the best left back in the entire USL this season. North Carolina is a team that struggled at times to create chances, to work past teams and really find their footing offensively, but the combination play against Miami was simply outrageously good. Here it's Armstrong on the overlap, drawing a defender, and ultimately buying just that one bit of space for Perez to find a crossing angle to get that chance inside of the box. It's a very simple play, it's very well finished, but it defines their combination so well. This is the heart of North Carolina at their best. They defend well in the 3-4-3, and they're able to activate their star players, the ones who define their attack, in the most dangerous areas of the pitch. Armstrong and Perez's interaction is what makes North Carolina so promising. Welcome into the USL Tactics Show, where today I want to talk about El Paso and their transition into the Wilmer Cabrera era. What you're going to see here to start off is a clip from their win in Charleston. Yes, it came against 10 men, but there was a crucial change late in the game that saw El Paso basically put 3 central midfielders into the mix, moving Eric Calvillo to the number 10 spot and bringing Bolu Akanyode into the pivot. This move really highlights a lot of what went right for El Paso. They're able to get touches in the center of the pitch, activate Amando Moreno, while not on this specific play, but in dangerous areas more consistently than they ever did against Birmingham this weekend. You're going to see part of the issue here. El Paso is working wide. They're going to get some nice combination play, but with the lack of a Calvillo-like chaser in the 10 spot, somebody who's able to really work vertically, get up and down, and force a defense to break their shape, they simply weren't as able to generate dangerous chances. Birmingham was able to really figure out what they were doing offensively. Tumi Moshaban was the player in that 10 spot for most of the game, and while he was good, he created 3 chances, he didn't help the Locomotive get into the box with enough regularity. Often, because of that lack of interaction with the central midfield, you saw plays like this, where Justin Dillon had to be the man who came deep to get touches. That's fine in theory, but it leaves you without a striker in the box. Defensively, El Paso also struggled with that 2-man pivot. You're seeing spatial issues here between the 2 center mids. Moshaban isn't filling in as somebody like Bolu Akanyode would, and the result is the winning goal for Birmingham. Now, I'm not saying this is a disaster for El Paso, and I'm broadly bullish on what Wilmer Cabrera is doing, but there are clear changes that need to be made in terms of personnel for El Paso to get right. It's been a tumultuous 2024 season for FC Tulsa, one in which players like Justin Portillo have left, and one in which their system, a very narrow 4-2-3-1 shape, hasn't exactly hit the ground running. There have been moments of joy, especially when you've got Patrick Segrist and Arthur Rogers overlapping from the fullback spots at the same time. But given losses and absences, that just hasn't been the case often enough. That's why this weekend's win against San Antonio was so exciting to see for Tulsa. With Owen Dam at right back, Milo Yosef on the right wing, and Diogo Pacheco at the left wing, Tulsa played a much more expansive game in which their wingers finally felt liberated to go at their opponents, to widen out and stretch the defense. You're seeing here, as Tulsa possesses in the final third, how Segrist and Dam, the fullbacks, could play a little bit narrower, could sit in a little bit to try and dictate play and open up the defense, drawing defenders up and allowing Yosef, for instance, to get on one-on-one situations like you see there where he crosses in. That was really the goal for Tulsa all night long. They're still a direct team, one that's trying to play longer passes into Stefan Stojanovic and Philip Goodrum in order to enter the attacking half, but the way in which they varied from there, the way in which Yosef was able to actually hug the sideline, not play inverted, was absolutely crucial. There were also, because of that effect, Tulsa was also able to press with a little more efficacy. You're seeing it here where Babacar Jallo, instead of playing as a winger, can activate his size, activate his strength, and drive at the defense with a takeaway. This play doesn't end in anything especially exciting for FC Tulsa, but it's emblematic of a different sort of approach that they brought to the table on Saturday night. Will this approach maintain itself over the course of the season? Time will tell, but it's still nice to see something positive for a Tulsa team who hasn't had it easy across this season. Hartford Athletic got a statement win this weekend against the Pittsburgh Riverhounds in the wake of a trade that really reshaped the way that they're going to be playing for the rest of the year. You can see the way that they've highlighted speed in their lineup in this example from early in the match. Pittsburgh is upfield in their 3-4-3, and they've crucially moved a wingback up the right side. Therefore, their center backs are isolated against Mishi Galina. And Galina is a player with ample speed, with ample pace, and he knows how to get behind and stretch defenses out. That's how Hartford wants to play. Still, their wingers were really able to pitch in defensively as well, as you're going to see here with Marcus Epps on the right wing, and crucially, Yunus Budati at the right back spot. Budati was received in a trade within the 11 this week, a deal that saw the more bludgeoning sort of striker, Romario Williams, go to the 11 in return for a right back who plays a two-way game, and it paid off handsomely for Hartford. Because of the comfort level with their back line, they were able to press up higher whenever Pittsburgh was trying to build from halfway. You're seeing the result here where themes really come together. Hartford presses, and Galina gets behind, and it's an excellent shot on goal, catching out a normally solid Pittsburgh team. Same idea here. You're breaking the lines, you're getting your wingers involved and isolating that back three, and because of the pace you're able to provide up front, you end up getting a goal for your efforts. This is prime Brendan Burke soccer. You get in one more play highlighting the same sorts of things that Hartford has frankly lacked for much of 2024. You're getting effort on the wings. You're getting a crucial shift from Yunus Budati on the overlap, something that has been exceptionally rare from the fullbacks in this roster. This was a game where Hartford really played their principles to the max, and it could be the start of something that galvanizes their season going forward.
Loudoun's rise into the Eastern playoff field has been a testament to the fact that their back three shape has been very fruitful in possession and has allowed them to press very effectively in a sort of 5-2-3 look that does well to both deny the center of the pitch and, when necessary, get support in the wide areas to deny opponents trying to break around the edge. You see that here, forcing a wasteful long ball. At the same time, those wingbacks are encouraged to get upfield and really support attacking moves. That can be useful at times, but it can also lead to vulnerabilities at the back. Here you see 7 players upfield for Loudoun. They work through those wingbacks, trying to engage the forward line, but when a turnover occurs, the lack of structure is palpable. Loudoun's back three are in position, but they're not supported. They're very alone, and Frank Lopez from Miami is able to get in to score. Really, the counterattack and defending the counterattack was Loudoun's primary problem early on. You see it again here on Miami's second goal. The first line of pressure is broken. A wingback has to step inside to cover behind an elevated center mid. And again, it's a break that puts Loudoun's center backs on the back foot and leads to a concession. So how did Ryan Martin change that dynamic up and get Loudoun back to a draw that frankly could have been a win with a late penalty? Here you see the main change. They're playing in a back four. Essentially, Martin took off one of his central defenders and brought Wesley Leggett into the front line as a speedy, flexible option that could stretch Miami and give Loudoun new life in the attacking third. You see Leggett get upfield there, stretching into the channel over the fullback, adding a secondary layer of width that didn't force Loudoun to provide that same level of wingback aggression upfield. They could still have a threat in the wide areas, but they kept a defensive structure. Leggett is seen there forcing a corner kick, one that would get Loudoun onto the board in the first place. And it really is an example of the way that this team is fluid, the way that they're flexible and can make adjustments in game. Loudoun won't beat you just because they're the most talented team on the pitch, but the way in which Ryan Martin is able to use his players to the max is why Loudoun is a dangerous team in the East. Sacramento has the best defensive record in the league, having allowed just 12 goals all season long. We saw a new side to them this weekend against Hartford Athletic. In that matchup, Sacramento really hinged their 3-4-3 press upfield, relying on their wingbacks and their center backs to get involved well past the halfway line to put in pressure and make stops against Hartford. As a result, the guests only completed 73% of their passes, well below league average. And you're going to see some of the mechanisms here. Right off the bat, notice Aldair Sanchez high in the box as an ostensible wingback, and note how Shane Wheat, a central defender, chases a man downfield, limits any sort of clean passing angle, and forces Hartford to wastefully punt long. This was the story for almost the entirety of the game. You'd see the combinations of wingbacks and attacking midfielders really pin Hartford against the sidelines. Note Trevor Amon as well at the striker spot here, noting that the pass back is going to come, going to press that man and making sure that Hartford is never able to cleanly play in over the top. This also applied to Sacramento when they were attacking. They kept up the intensity to stay in the final third, control the game, and never allow Hartford to counterattack with any sense of control. Again, three-man combination. You're getting Amon, you're getting Nick Ross at the attacking midfield spot, and Sanchez is pinned high, closing down and making sure that Sacramento can get into the box for a dangerous chance. It's this virtuous cycle where pressure keeps them in the final third, counter pressure keeps them there with the ball, and it all combines to create a winning opportunity for Sacramento. You see it here late in the game. Again, it's high pressure. Again, it's Wheat cutting out a pass that could have been dangerous. This time, because the Republic have moved into a two-striker formation, they're able to pay off the opportunity and score the winning goal. But it's just more of the same. These are the principles that Mark Briggs relies upon, and his ability to intensify them against a team like Hartford is why Sacramento is still a title threat all season long. In their least effective moments this year, Orange County has been a one-note team that has verticality over the top and not much else offensively, unable to access the central midfield. And we saw that script flip in a major way against Memphis 901 this weekend. Memphis is a team that presses you in a 4-4-2, pushing up one of their midfielders to form a strike pair that really focuses on denying the midfield. Because of what we got from Ben Norris, who you're seeing here, and what we saw from Ashish Chadha, who was able to return to the central midfield, suddenly Orange County had a complement of three players with those two and Kyle Scott that could cause trouble between the lines. You're going to see a team that's patient, that's getting touches from their central midfielders, and is really trying to goad Memphis out before they strike ahead. This is really what you want to see if you're Orange County trying to exert control in the game. At the same time, there was a real sense of width from side to side, and that was because of Ryan Dogman's return at left back. Dogman was a borderline all-league player for me last season, someone who's been out with injuries much of the time. But the way that he planted seeds of doubt within Memphis's structure, made sure that Orange County could beat you from any side at any angle, was critical to the overall approach. Here you're going to see them work down the right, opposite of Dogman, and it's Chadha, again, restored to the midfield because Dogman is back, working in, making sure that Memphis overreacts, and then once they've committed, hitting a fullback in the attacking half to make sure that the attack is progressing. This is the sort of complexity and variety that Paul Hardiman will love to see on the sideline on an interim basis for Orange County. And it really kind of defined what they did right against Memphis. Here it's Scott being the star man, but he didn't have to be that for 90 minutes. He had teammates making runs, and once he was activated, he was able to activate that verticality that this team relies on. Still, it wasn't one note. It's what Orange County needs to do if they want to get back into the playoff race down the stretch. Weapon is uniquely good at using the wide center backs in their 3-5-2 shape to really do damage to the opposition. It's why they're in the Open Cup semifinals, and it's why they got a point against Loudoun United this weekend. You see the look here against Atlanta. That was a team that pressed in a front three, sort of like Indy, but the ability of those center backs to work around the edges and get the 11 into the final third made the first half a game in which Indy really took the fight to Atlanta United, an MLS competitor. Here you see Josh O'Brien and wingback Aiden Stanley working into the attacking half. But it starts with the fact that Callum Chapman-Page, the centermost central defender, can hit O'Brien around the edge. Similar story here, but you're working on the opposite side through Ben Ofemu. Ofemu, that right-sided center back, really is the most exciting, most daring player in the back line, someone with real passing range who, as you're seeing, can often get hockey assists, work into triples, and make sure that Indy is getting into attack. Now, in the Loudoun game, Indy came up against another team in really a 5-2-3 sort of shape, and they used that width in the back line to force Loudoun to step up and thereby open space in the midfield. You saw less of the daring runs, less of the daring passes, but because Indy was able to draw Loudoun up, they were able to get overloads in more important areas of the pitch. That's the story here. O'Brien starts as an initiator. He's going to end up hitting Stanley on the left. And because there are so many possible combinations in the center of the park, Indy is able to get in behind and tie up the game. This is the sort of intentionality and variety that the best teams have. And for Indy, uniquely, it starts with the back line. I do need to shout out the defensive quality as well. You're going to see all three players doing their job really excellently here from the Atlanta game. Particularly note Chapman-Page and Ofemu. When Chapman-Page steps up there to contest the shot, Ofemu ends up kind of filling in that central role as the play develops, and Atlanta is never really able to do what they need to do to penetrate. It's a very good sequence, and it's emblematic of why Indy 11 is so dangerous this season. Blue City is the best team in the USL for a whole host of reasons, but what stood out this weekend in a win against Monterey Bay, a game where Louisville went up by 2 goals within 7 minutes, was their ability to go 5 wide and stretch Monterey Bay's back 4 out in the attacking third. You're seeing a simply mapped setup here with Aiden McFadden on the ball at right wing back and 4 players lurking further ahead, able to take advantage of Monterey. Ray Serrano was really key in those opening moves. You're going to see him in the left wing role here, but he's hugging narrow, making runs that force a defender to commit, and thereby opening space for a teammate. You see the right back has to follow Serrano, and Jake Morris is open at the far post to finish as a result. It's going to be a similar story in the move you're seeing here. You're getting the 3 forwards involved, and all of their runs are important. Sam Gleadle coming on the near side occupies 2 defenders. Aiden McFadden receiving over there does the same thing in effect. That creates another twosome with Serrano and Harris heading towards the far post, able to activate their numbers and catch Monterey out. Because Serrano is occupying the right back and the center back doesn't quite know where to go, Harris is able to finish the chance. Here you're seeing it again in a more settled sort of situation. This time, note the defensive reaction. There are 2 runners on the right from Louisville, but Elijah Winder is cutting against their momentum on the ball. Because of all of that, the right back and the right center back once again are forced to come inside and once again are taken advantage of. Winder is able to hit Jake Morris in space in that far channel, and it turns into yet another chance for Louisville City. This is the excellence that makes this team just unbelievably difficult to defend against. It's somewhat simple on paper, but it's very hard to execute, and it should be appreciated more. Louisville is doing special things with their young core, and they're an incredibly fun team to watch right now. San Antonio is currently in 11th place in the West, and they've only scored multiple goals in a game twice since about mid-May. This is a team that's sputtering offensively, and yet they showed so much potential early on against FC Tulsa this Saturday. As you can tell by their heat map, their attack was very much varied. They had a spread across the length of the pitch, and they were able to generate chances in a number of ways. Certainly, there was the aspect of the long ball game. San Antonio's 3-5-2 shape was able to activate the wingbacks and take advantage of space in the wide areas, as this team is wont to do. At the same time, there was a sense of grit and a sense of explosiveness down the middle that we haven't seen much of, and much of that was due to Bura in the central midfield. You see him intercept here, carrying the ball and linking up with Lucho Solignac to nearly create a chance for San Antonio. That mix of directness and intensity was key. Here, they're getting a long ball off of a Mitchell Tainer intervention, but look at the way that they speed up the game. Look at the way that Jorge Hernandez instantly plays that chip to get Lucho in for the early goal. This is fast, it's direct, it's physical, but it's a different sort of thing than what we saw in the second half. San Antonio's attack was much more based in their own half. It was less varied from end to end. They were relying on Luke Hackinson, who came off the bench, to try and get touches in lower areas, but to little avail. As you're seeing here, the longer passes just felt a little bit less intentional. There was less of a second ball structure. Without the ball winning of Bora, you didn't quite have what you needed to get past Tulsa and really activate the long game. Moreover, Jorge Hernandez became sort of the only option in the attacking half, somebody that San Antonio was too dependent on, and therefore defenses were able to compress against. You see the turnover there, one that comes because Tulsa is able to compress to Hernandez's action. This is what we've seen far too often from San Antonio. As good as the first half was, they didn't see it through for 90 minutes, and it's really a microcosm of why they've struggled in the table all season long.
Loudoun sealed the season sweep over Tampa Bay this weekend by trusting their system but changing up their shape in order to beat the Rowdies and support a possessive style from the back. What you're going to see here is Loudoun keeping their structure fairly deep, trying to build from the back, but showing variation in order to maximize this 4-player core at the center of their 4-4-2. You saw the double pivot. You saw 2 forwards. This play doesn't turn out, but there was this 4-man structure at the heart of Loudoun's shape that not only allowed them to overload Tampa Bay's 3-man midfield, but also allowed them to get back and recover defensively as needed. Here you're going to see the move that ended up determining the game. You'll note Khalil Ahmedkar, one of those 2 forwards, roving amidst the midfield to start the sequence. If you watch him, he's waiting for an angle to develop, making a run in behind, and then, only then, you're getting Loudoun's wingers to burst in, make the runs needed to overload Tampa Bay when they're fully beaten. This is patient offense that's taking advantage of the space given in the middle and then working outside when the moment arises. Loudoun is a team that's very good about dominating the center of the pitch, and this is why. You're seeing the back end of that structure here. 2 center backs, 2 center mids, stay very tight and make sure that Tampa Bay can't really activate Manuel Arteaga or Cal Jennings in useful areas. I especially like what Tommy McCabe does in this play. The defensive midfielder starts in the pivot as usual, but he tracks into almost a 3rd center back spot just to make sure that the sequence is solidified and Tampa Bay can't work in down the right. They work left instead, and they're never able to penetrate before Florian Velo gets a takeaway. You're seeing it in the high press as well here. In this sequence, Kwame is caught high, but McCabe is sliding over, making sure there's coverage, and denying Tampa Bay the ability to work into the half space with any sort of success. This, again, is Loudoun ball at their finest. They're keeping their shape, they're pressing fairly hard, and they're possessing the team to death. They've started fairly poorly against Tampa Bay, but it was the trust in those principles that saw them over the line in the end.
Charleston scored a 3-1 win over a shorthanded Memphis team this weekend, but it was no walk in the park, and that's because of Memphis's unique deployment of a 4-4-2 shape, headlined by 2 midfielders anchoring the press. You see Emerson Heineman and Bruno Lapa closing down on the Charleston center backs, backed up by 4 midfielders who were man-marking their opposite numbers in the Charleston 4-2-3-1. You're seeing the battery sort of work through, and they're able to keep possession, but because of that tight shape and because of the tight marking, it was very difficult for the battery to advance in the early going. There was a lot of possession around the back, possession that was focused on the wide areas, working in an almost U-shape around Memphis rather than carving through them with any sort of efficacy. That dynamic changed when the battery were able to activate the half spaces, specifically on the left side. We've seen Juan David Torres drop low quite often to get touches, and you're going to see an example of that here. Because of that drop and because Nick Markanek is high on the right, it's almost a 2-striker look for Charleston. They're working against the momentum of 901. They're getting Markanek involved in space against that momentum once again, and he's able to earn a corner for his efforts. You saw more players than just Torres activate in that same region to break through, however. Here, it's Arturo Rodriguez, dropping from the number 10 spot to complement the double pivot for the battery. He works in, Nathan Dos Santos makes a really smart overlap, and then it's a payoff for Torres in the box. This is the sort of clever thinking, clever movement that powered Charleston. Memphis actually put up a nice fight when they went down a man, but before they could sub and rebalance their team, they had this turnover. Granted, it's a very well-worked play from Charleston. You're seeing Torres, you're seeing Marcanic. They're able to turn on a dime and pay off the hard work in possession with a really quick break that catches Memphis out and changes the dynamic of the game. That variety, that ability to break down a set defense no matter the setup, is why Charleston is in the mix for the 1 seed. New Mexico United can hurt you in 100 ways, but it's their center back pairing, no matter who is in that group, that really sets them apart and shown especially brightly this weekend against Colorado Springs. You're seeing Talon Maples here carrying the ball upfield, putting the switchbacks to the screws because he's able to dribble around the press. That's something you rarely see from a central defender at any level, much less in the USL. But Maples knew when to pick those moments, or as you're seeing here, to reset and find space for a partner like Kalen Ryden. Ryden, who came off at halftime, was equally excellent as Maples as a distributor. Their ability to set the tone in the final third, allow New Mexico to reset when they had that foothold in the attacking half, was critical to the offensive flow, to that sense of control, and the ability to limit Colorado Springs from getting their own counterattacks, from taking advantage of sloppy turnovers. It thus allowed New Mexico to really live in those dangerous areas and allow players like Mokwele Akale, a very slick dribbler, to do damage where it mattered the most. Even as Colorado Springs heightened the press, Ryden continued to excel. You're seeing him hit a pass to Zico Bailey in the pivot there, and then it's a 1-2 combination that sees New Mexico advance. Those two defenders were equally excellent in their own area. You're seeing Colorado Springs pass quite far upfield, and while Ryden does end up fouling his opponent there, it's the sort of stop that you're going to live with. Colorado Springs isn't able to keep their move going. Kind of same idea here, where you're getting a step up against Ronaldo Damas. Yes, the switchbacks get their attacking mid to receive, but because Damas is covered, they aren't able to access their most crucial creator. This is really par for the course for a New Mexico team that is shapely and relies on that central defensive structure, no matter the context. You see them holding firm in the back four here. They've got that platform, and they've got Zico Bailey covering in the number 6 spot. Yes, this play ultimately ends with a pretty sloppy deflection, but it's emblematic of the way that New Mexico stays structured and relies on those central defenders, no matter the phase of play, to get the job done. The Miami FC are in the win column for the 3rd time this season, and the first time at Pitbull Stadium, and they got there without really changing their basic approach. This is the team that isn't afraid to sit deep, sit in a back five that's very flat, and almost eschews width when they attack upfield. However, because of forwards like Michael Lawrence and Frank Lopez, this team retains a real counterattacking threat, one that often drives down the middle and doesn't rely on wingbacks to get the job done. This move fizzles out, but it's the sort of play, the sort of sequence you expect to see from Miami, and the heat map bears that out. They didn't exactly light the heat map on fire against Monterey Bay this weekend, but you can see that real nexus down the center of the pitch. They did just enough against a team that admittedly went shorthanded to get the win. You see some of the logic here. They're facing a kind of 2-on-1 in the wide area, potentially, with Roberto Molina, the right wingback, sitting low, making sure that Monterey can't get behind, can't combine to really create a decent chance. Certainly there's space for Monterey, but you never feel like that sort of 4-on-2 situation is going to go awry. However, the wingbacks retain the ability to press up at certain moments. You see Alejandro Matrano, the left wingback in this example, closing down on an opponent well above the halfway line. As a result, Joey Desart, the higher of the two central midfielders here, is going to get an interception, drive in, and create a chance right down the middle for Miami. This is what you want to see if you're Antonio Nocerino. There's structure, there's logic, and they're executing without making mistakes all the while. This isn't exactly the most consistent thing you get from Miami, but the way they held that high line, the way they goaded Monterey into passes that just weren't going to connect, was key to getting the win. This was a very strong performance for a team that's lacked them in 2024, and you hope that you can see it more down the stretch for Miami. Colorado Springs has 11 goals in their last 3 games, and this Saturday's dominant performance against Tampa Bay was another example of how they're able to turn defense into attacking joy. You're going to see an example here where winger Jonas Feldbjerg is caught upfield, but left back Matt Real, stepping up and intercepting there, is able to launch his side right back into attack. That's the mean of the switchbacks right now. They're getting very aggressive play from their fullbacks, and that's leading to opportunities upfield for their wingers. You note this play ends with Zach Zandy recovering a ball on the edge of the box and playing his teammates right back in. That's the other plank of what's making this team so good. Here, it's Tyreek McGee making that same sort of recovery, counter-pressing to keep his side in the attacking third, and building up to ultimately create a really wonderful chance that Yosuke Hanya heads in at the far post. It's excellent team play, and it's keeping this team in dangerous areas constantly. You see the main hub of activity from Saturday's game. It's in that left side. Now, this wasn't the strongest performance for Tampa Bay, who varied their press, but still, the switchbacks were so able to break down the middle of the pitch. There, it's Justin Dillon, a recently acquired striker, and one who's replaced Ronaldo Damas in the lineup, holding up play, getting McGee on the ball, and leading to another expansive attack. This team knows how to move quickly. Whether they're turning you over, whether they're breaking in this manner, right down the middle, leveraging strikerly hold-up play, they move quickly, find opportunities, and consistently break you down. Colorado Springs has really made some moves recently, whether it's dealing Malik Foster or relegating Koa Santos from right back to the bench, but you're seeing the payoff in spades. The extra steal, the extra creativity in the midfield, that extra spark they're getting from wingers like Fjellberg is absolutely definitional to why this team has been so good lately. This team feels like they could really go on to make noise in the West down the stretch. After consecutive defeats, Rhode Island FC is back in the win column and back in the thick of the home field race because of the way they grew into the game against FC Tulsa this weekend. Here you're going to see Tulsa's goal-scoring move from minutes into the match, and it's a play where they win the ball back in the midfield, break lines easily through Rhode Island, and take advantage of their defense on the counter. The challenge then from there on out was to press Tulsa, make sure they couldn't break lines that easily, and gradually dominate them by controlling territory. You see from the heat map that Cano Smith and Rhode Island were able to do so. Some of that started with pressure upfield. Here you're going to see a forward step in, force a tackle, and allow Rhode Island to stretch into a five-man front line attack and earn chances. This was the formula early on. Stop Tulsa in useful areas, break quickly, and especially try to engage Georgia Quizera at the left wing back spot. Quizera is a player who is full of speed, full of that capability of getting upfield and punishing defenses. And you see him do it time and again here. Part of it was matchup based. Tulsa was playing a striker at winger on the right side in essence. But then as the game went on, you saw Rhode Island get even more aggressive in the press. They're forcing a turnover here because of that front three forward look, and they're instantly going upfield, playing vertical, playing direct, and not allowing Tulsa to find their defensive shape. Same idea here, but with a different flavor. This play starts with a long ball from the back. Koke Vegas isn't wasting time. He plays upfield, and then suddenly it's that man again. Quizera gets a one-on-one, gets to the end line, and it's a chance for Rhode Island to do damage where it counts. That was really the tempo of the game for the back 45 minutes. Here it's another counter-pressing opportunity. You see the front three. You see Quizera lurking behind. He gets the recovery. He works into Noah Fuson, and it's a payoff for Rhode Island. This is the formula for this team going forward. High pressure, quick vertical attacking, and controlling games. We've seen it from Rhode Island for much of the year, but paying it off with wins is what matters in that Eastern Conference race. After what seemed like a season-defining win over San Antonio 2 weeks back, Phoenix Rising is back in the mud after a week where they lost twice and mustered less than 2 total expected goals across those 2 games. What are the issues that are driving Phoenix struggles right now? As you're going to see here, the loss against Orange County really began in the typical style that had seen Phoenix to success. Gabby Torres took over the left back spot, but you still saw that player move up between phases, becoming this presence in the half space to help Rising attack. The problem came in terms of their sharpness and their movement in the final third. This has been a problem for Rising all season, but look at this example. There are 4 players in a very tight area, and they simply aren't forcing opposing Orange County to bend, to break, to get out of their defensive shape. Now, Phoenix wisely is able to get out of the pressure, and they're able to work into Lawrence White, who makes a smart step from center back. But you're going to see another problem. Tomas Angel has not hit the ground running since joining Phoenix. That's a somewhat heavy touch, and then he takes the ball out of bounds, exemplifying what we've seen from a talented player who just hasn't seen the back of the net. Now, in their weekend match against Las Vegas, Phoenix showed a little bit more flexibility. Mohamed Traore took over at left back, and both he and Wyke were willing to advance upfield. The problem is that's kind of two center backs trying to do an offensive job. You see Traore let the ball run here, losing a possibility of playing Remy Cabral in with immediacy. When he recovers, the cross goes wanting. It's another example that just hammers home the same points here. It's going to be very good interplay from a very good possessive Phoenix team. You're going to see Lawrence Wyke get a touch. You're going to see Charlie Dennis, who got the start here, advance into the half space. However, neither Cabral nor Angel are making the run with the proper timing to truly challenge Las Vegas. When Dennis is able to play a through ball, it's easily shepherded away and shown out of bounds. Phoenix just doesn't have the offensive consistency they need, and it's going to drag them into the depths of the playoff race throughout the end of the season if they can't get it right.
Loudoun nabbed a massive 2-0 win in Hartford this weekend to all but sew up a playoff spot, and the ability of their varied attacking line to make a difference in Connecticut was really the thing that swung the game. You're going to see those attackers atop the 3-4-3 and the high press here, and you'll note that Florian Velo on the right is going hard at the goalkeeper, while the striker, Zach Ryan, sits off a little bit deeper to clog the midfield. When Loudoun regains, Ryan is able to get a touch and quickly lace in teammate Riley Boudoir, the starting left winger, in behind. It's that connectivity, that interplay between the attackers that makes this team so fascinating. Here, Velo sets the terms on the right, gets a wing back involved, and you'll note Ryan making a very hard run at the near post. That gives Boudoir room to find a cutback, make a shot, and put pressure on the Hartford net. That's par for the course for Loudoun, but it goes deeper than the attacking impact. Here, it's a move driven by the wingbacks. One, Kwame Wu on the left, is crossing to Keegan Tingy on the other. Velo knows what's going on. He knows that his wide player is a little bit overcommitted in the final third, so he makes the effort to track back and shut down Michi Galina, one of Hartford's premier attacking threats. Later in the game, Ryan Martin needed more offense to seal the deal. He introduced Abdulatif Abukora and Wesley Leggett to get the job done. You see Leggett getting the touch there, and he advances, continues to roam, and pushes into the box to free up room for Tingy to get a shot on his left foot. It's that sort of probing motion, that energy that makes the 19-year-old Abukora such a special talent for this Loudoun side. Leggett is a similar level of quality, frankly, but he brings that sort of in-behind speed, that motion that never lets a defense off the hook. Here, he and Abukora link up for the second goal in the game, one that seals the deal for Loudoun and gives them the victory they need. It's the ability of Ryan Martin to choose the player he needs in the specific context that makes Loudoun so good, and they have the talent to pull it off no matter the game and no matter the opponent. Hartford is a matter of points outside of the Eastern playoff field right now, and that's a credit to the fact that they absolutely took care of business against North Carolina this weekend in a 4-3 game that started with a 4-0 lead to Hartford. The real game changer was their ability to attack over the top of North Carolina's elevated back five. That high line was ripe for the taking from Michi Galina on the left wing, and the interplay of Danny Barrera and Mamadou Dieng in the central areas. You're going to see Galina getting over the top from that left side here, squeaking behind the right wing back for North Carolina and moving his team into the final third. Now, whenever Hartford got into the final third that way, and they did so quite often, they tended to push their three center mids far upfield to help them force the issue, to retain possession, and to counterpress in dangerous areas. You're going to see those center mids passing to one another here, culminating in a goal for Barrera from the number 10 spot. And that was really par for the course. You saw the effort at both ends. Here, it's defensive, with Barrera and Anderson Asiadu and Marlon Hairston, all three pushing back to make sure that North Carolina can't take advantage of the very strong left side of the field. This was a really carefully put together approach for Brendan Burke and Hartford, a game that maximized their talent and took advantage of everything that North Carolina has in terms of vulnerabilities. Here, the defense is overly attentive to Dieng, a breakout striker this season, and that allows Barrera, a 34-year-old and someone you wouldn't necessarily expect to show that speed over the top, to get behind, score the goal, and give his team the lead. Even in situations like this that are more of a typical knockdown, a second ball situation, Hartford just had that sense for going over the top, finding their speedier, trickier players, and doing the business. This is the sort of execution that Hartford needs if they want to make the playoffs in a very tight Eastern Conference. Memphis 901 is a team that's always going to press you hard. That's their identity, and you see it here in a sequence where John Baquero kind of drops off while Bruno Lapa pushes up. But the takeaway is that Memphis wants to pin you back with high pressure coming out of their midfield. That often pays off for 901, but there are moments where it can get them into trouble. And that was really visible early on against Phoenix Rising this Saturday, whenever Rising tried to break down the left side. Memphis just felt a step slow. They were too wont to foul and a little bit mistimed in the way they were defending. If the Memphis press overextended in one direction and Phoenix was able to work to the weak side, it really tended to spell trouble. There just wasn't that connectivity you would need from Oscar Jimenez and Noe Meza on that side. Enter Akeem Ward. Ward is somebody who is brilliant, and he can stop the plays like those you're seeing here. He typically plays at left back for 901, but he's somebody who's two-footed and provides you the ability you need to make stops. You see Phoenix's left side contributions in the first half hour versus those in the final 60 minutes. There's a ton of action in those final 60 minutes, of course, but it all comes outside of the box. That's because of Ward's ability to defend on the back foot. You see him facing towards the central ball carrier here with his hips rotated one way. Moments later, he's turning his hips the other way against a potential crosser to make sure that Phoenix isn't really able to get a decent look. They aren't going to have an unperturbed ability to play the ball into the box. That's why Rising only got 3 touches in the box from their left-sided players in that final hour of the game. Moreover, Ward brought a real quality in possession that helped Memphis to stretch things out and ultimately get their winning goal down the right side. You see Meza and a midfielder working up that angle, and then Ward finds his moment to stretch Emil Cuello out, hit across, and create danger. This is a player that I've praised over and over again. I had him as a mid-season Defender of the Year possibility, but you see the reason why here. Ward is fantastic, and Stephen Glass knows how to use him to make Memphis whole when it counts.
The Charleston Battery are headed to the conference semifinals, and that advancement is in large part due to the smart changes that Ben Pierman made in terms of the Battery shape taking on Pittsburgh over the weekend. You saw right off the bat that Charleston adopted a shape with 4 forwards. It was really more of a 4-2-4 formation, one that, in an exception to the rule of the season, featured Nick Marcanic almost like an additional striker next to the usual bench player Jackson Conway. The change also had the effect of allowing Aaron Malloy and Jay Chapman to split in the pivot, with Malloy often dropping deep to create as Chapman sat between the lines of the Riverhounds' 5-2-3 pressing shape. Still, you were able to keep Marcanic upfield direct where he could distract the defense and open up lanes for Juan David Torres, who you see receiving on the right wing here. Passes into Torres were unbelievably useful for the Battery. They really derived their strength finding room in the right half space, advancing past Pittsburgh, and dictating where the game was being played. Now, the crucial other plank for the Battery was their ability to win second balls, their ability to maintain possession on the edge of the area. There you see Jay Chapman receiving the ball off the deflected cross. Both he and Aaron Malloy had a ton of recoveries, a ton of tackles, and you're not even seeing the one from that clip recorded on the league stat page. The role that those two played to keep possession and to keep the Battery in charge of territory was vital. As this play ends up developing, you're going to see Malloy possess, draw the defense in, and make sure that Chris Allen, the left back, and Arturo Rodriguez, the left winger, are able to get involved. Rodriguez can look up, find Conway and Marcanic in the box, making clever runs off one another, and it sets up the Golden Boot winner for a diving header that ultimately wins the game. Still, none of it is possible without that shape change that Pierman implemented. This is the versatility that makes Charleston so dangerous and really sets them apart as a legitimate title contender.
As Rhode Island FC advances to the conference finals, it's really easy to focus on JJ Williams and this team's attack as a big reason why they're moving on. But I want to talk about the defensive effort that allowed them to keep a rare clean sheet at Lynn Family Stadium. You're going to see a couple sequences here, starting with one where Rhode Island is in the high press. JJ Williams and Noah Fuson are pushing up high, applying pressure to the goalkeeper and not allowing Louisville to play out safely. Now, this forces a long ball, and that really plays into Rhode Island's hands. Few teams are as good at setting up a structure in second ball situations. Here you see a center back, Morris Duggan, advancing, and Georgia Quizera filling behind him from wingback. Meanwhile, 2 of the 3 Rhode Island midfielders are closing down on the space where a header is likely to end up. As the play develops, Louisville can't claim possession, can't keep the attack moving, and it turns into a chance at the other end, just like that for Rhode Island. You're going to see another defensive sequence starting here that shows a little bit of a deeper seated pressing situation. Now, note Noah Fuson is deeper at the start of this play. You've almost got a diamond-like midfield, one that stops Louisville City from moving down the middle of the park, where they can activate players like Taylor Davila, for instance. That situation, that setup for Rhode Island, constantly forced Louisville City to work around the edges. Now you're going to see that playing out here, and you'll note the fact that Rhode Island is keeping a pristine back five initially. They don't want Quizera to step up and allow Taylor Davila to get behind too early. But when the situation comes, when they can get a double team on Aiden McFadden, like you're seeing here, they instantly close down and apply that pressure. Now note what happens when the play circulates. Rhode Island has immediately found their structure again. It's 5-3-2, it's hard to break down, and Lou City has to try for a long ball that's a little bit ambitious, and it's playing into Rhode Island's hands once more. Again, you're seeing the situational pressure applied. It's JJ Williams coming low, showing off that effort to get the takeaway, and you're going to see Rhode Island clear their lines to end the play. Moments like that, structures like that, set this team apart. Union Omaha is your USL League One champion, and they got there with a dominant 3-0 win against Spokane over the weekend, in which they didn't allow a shot on target and gave the Velocity just 9 touches in their box. This dominant defensive effort began in the press. Omaha has been a strong counter-pressing and pressing team all season, and those tenets were on display in the final. You're going to watch this sequence here mere seconds into the match, where Omaha moves into attack mode. They start somewhat narrow, switch a ball over to Joe Gallardo at right wing back, but watch as Lagos Kunga, the winger marked in black, and Max Schneider, that midfielder in the neon green, slide over to support Gallardo, not only providing offensive outlets, but setting their side up to eventually counterpress and keep the ball in a dangerous position. Kunga here tries to backheel. It's a clever play, but it doesn't come off. As soon as the turnover happens, Schneider is stepping up, making sure that Spokane doesn't have an easy route to exit their defensive zone. That pressure is consistent, and Omaha used it all night. Now, at the same time, there's always a man back, making sure that Omaha maintains their shape. In this case, it's Pedro Dolabella, the all-league midfielder who led this team in goals. He comes up, makes that late charge, and he's going to be able to force Spokane into a sloppy back pass that ultimately leads to a shot. This sequence, in about a minute, will lead to a corner kick that puts Omaha on top, never to lose that edge. Now, in the high press and pure defensive phase of the game, Omaha tended to use a 3-4-3, but they were willing to push Dolabella up in certain situations against a midfielder or to charge at a center back. In this case, he's moving above the attacking line, going at a defender, and forcing a turnover. You're going to see Omaha continue to push the ball back, getting attempt on goal, and it's just a brilliant offense, brilliant defense combined into one. In this case, it's Charlie Ostrom. He's that man like Dolabella in the first case who's sitting back and making sure that Omaha has somebody to step up and blow up the play. He gets the turnover, the play ends, and Omaha is on their way to a title. The Colorado Springs Switchbacks are your 2024 USL Championship winners, and the way that they found their matchups in the half spaces and channels against Rhode Island FC on Saturday really turned the matchup in their favor. You're going to see the patience that they had building out of the back here, swinging the ball from side to side, seeking out the moment where they feel like they have an edge against Rhode Island's shape. Rhode Island, in their typical 5-3-2, is a little bit narrow, and they're relying on a strong reaction from their wingback, in this case Noah Fuson on the ball side, to do the job. However, because Colorado Springs has the winger, fullback, and a drifting Juan Tejada in position, they're able to really create a 3-on-1 trap in that pocket of space on the sideline. Fuson can't get there, there's a ball over the top, and if it's a worse referee, you're getting a penalty call in their favor. Now, in this sequence that ends up with a goal, you're going to note how Colorado Springs was able to find the matchup they wanted. You start with Fuson on the fullback and Yosuke Hanya carrying the ball, dragging midfielder Mark Ibarra with him towards the sideline. This is that patience on display. Because of the run from Hanya, Ibarra essentially takes over as the left wing back. Rhode Island keeps their structure, but it's not the matchup they want, going one-on-one against a player as good as Hanya. He's able to dribble inside, take on Ibarra on the dribble, and find, once again, Juan Tejada making a run to the post to be able to score and give his side a lead they wouldn't end up returning. The final goal in this sequence that we're going to show here features Tejada receiving, chesting the ball down, and again, freezing players with his movement. Ibarra gives chase, center back Grant Stoneman steps up, and that is distracting the defense in a way that allows Colorado Springs to find a gap on the sideline, hit Jairo Henriquez, and work through to allow for the banging goal. Yes, it's going to be an excellent individual effort from Henriquez to score this one and give his team the win, but it's part of the process. It's part of what makes the switchback so special, and it's a testament to James Chambers' excellent coaching that they were able to get the job done on Saturday.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.